All right, guys, we are going to go up, and that thunderstorm sound effect was kind of appropriate.
What a way to make an entrance.
What a way to make an entrance. So we're discussing Hurricane Maria again with Mike Thomas this morning, guys. Welcome to the show. We're going to be kind of just following the breaking news on this storm. And actually, you're looking at a split screen here. Below us is actually a shot of the rescue, the search and rescue that's ongoing in Mexico for the other natural disaster that's been
Mexico City, correct?
Mexico City, yeah. That's been affecting them. More than 200, I think, more than 235 fatalities right now.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, those images coming out there. And we've seen the dogs going back and forth looking for people, trying to find survivors as best as they can. Haven't seen them pull anybody out yet, but you know, you got to hope for the best in this kind of situation. Thoughts and prayers to everybody down there and everybody who's got families down there.
Yeah, the story is they were looking for a girl in a now like decimated schoolhouse. So that was this morning. So anyway, that's what we're watching.
I think they found her and she was still alive. I haven't seen the latest update.
There was some hope. Yeah, they were hearing her and
they
stuff.
said she was moving her fingers. Okay. I remember that. I haven't heard the latest on that, whether or not, hopefully she survived and they were able to get her out. But I mean, just look at the damage.
I know.
That's it. The power of an earthquake is just something incredible, and it's devastating when it hits a populated area like Mexico City. I think is one of, and I could be wrong on this, I think it's one of the most populated cities in the world, and it's certainly one of the most
I think you are right.
densely populated cities in the world. So something like a 7.1 earthquake there, just horrific.
I know our sister station in Los Angeles is down there, and they've been doing some live hits throughout the day. So as much as we have that, we'll bring that to you live as well, and any pictures that we continue to get in. But let's talk more about Maria, which we've been tracking kind of throughout the week. It passed over Puerto Rico, and now this is where it is, right?
Yes, it's just north, actually, of the Dominican Republic there. You see San Domingo there on the southern half of the island. Good news is those on the kind of from the middle to the southern half of the island of the Dominican Republic are just getting mostly heavy rain. Winds are still offshore on that side of the island, so they're not getting the storm surge on the southern side, but northern side, complete opposite. You're getting heavy rain, heavy wind, and strong storm surge as well. It's not what it was in Puerto Rico. It's a weaker storm. It's Category 3, still a major hurricane. Winds of 115, I believe, at last check. I'm checking myself.
Okay.
On the latest advisory, it looks like maximum winds of 115. So Category 3 major hurricane. Still nothing that's that's still extreme. That's a powerful storm, but it's not what it was, the 155 going into Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And the key is it's staying offshore. You see the eye rotating around there. The eye is miles offshore. That's keeping that core. The strongest winds, there's 115 miles an hour winds, are really, really close to the center. They're around the eye wall. As long as you keep that offshore, you're avoiding the worst. Not that there still won't be damage. And one of the biggest concerns in the Dominican Republic is because of how small the island is and how the geography kind of really ramps up towards the middle of it, is the heavy rain and the potential for flooding and mudslides.
In the Dominican Republic.
In the Dominican Republic from everything that she's dropping on it. That's not to say that they're not exactly out of the woods just yet in Puerto Rico either. They're still having rain coming through. I know
we're going to bring up some interesting graphics here for you.
Tweets here.
To see, we had them set up, or were they on this one? No.
No, they were on this one. I'm just trying to find.
But I know we have some other interesting maps to kind of track what's going on, how it's going to affect us here in DC, and also kind of going up the East Coast, and we can look for it.
Yeah,
I'll help you find them.
Oh well, I know exactly where they are, but
under yours. We'll pull up his tweets, and while we do that, again, let's bring this double picture here of the search and rescue that continues in Mexico. So two different things, two big natural disasters, really, that are going on.
Both in their own right horrific.
In their own right. And I know, you were looking at some tweets from the Weather Service, San Juan's official.
And we can show you that because, again, things have wrapped up in terms of the worst of the winds, and I've seen live shots out there this morning, but they're not out of the threat for still even some severe thunderstorms coming through on the backside of this storm system. So there you go. San Juan put out this. They're working hard over there. I got a friend who works for this National Weather Service office down there. Said that he's never been through anything like this. Neither have a lot of the people on that island. The last one that hit with this much strength was way back in the 1920s, early 1930s. So
he lives in the Virgin Islands and works.
He lives on Puerto Rico and works for the National Weather Service at San Juan.
Oh my goodness.
So they put this out. They've been working so hard, and he confirms that there's devastation here. There's flooding everywhere. We have no power. Nobody on the island has power. incredible that it knocked out power for the entire island.
Okay, explain that for a second, because yesterday I was seeing some other news outlets and stuff do these live hits, and their whole point was, hey, there's no power on this island, but like they were able to do. It was weird. It was like there's certain generators that.
When we do live shots in the field, we bring our own batteries, we bring our own field.
Mobile.
I'm sure everything's going off the batteries they have. They probably have some generators. It all depends on how they got there. If they flew down there, they're probably limited on what they can do. But I'm sure there's some sort of direct connect going there, either
some way they can do
some sort of microwave or satellite, because cell service is very limited down there, from what I'm hearing, and power is non-existent. So, I heard months. They said the mayor of San Juan and of some of the towns around Puerto Rico there all came out and said it could be months until we get the power on. So some of these poor people in the middle of summer, it gets hot and humid there.
My goodness.
Are going to be dealing with power outages, and
so a lot of devastation there and problems with.
And 2 weeks after Irma, they took $1 billion in damage. I think was done there after Irma. So
my goodness,
incredible.
All right, so we have this tweet from them, and now what should we look at next?
Let's do the track. Since we're focused on Irma, let's go ahead and get up the track. Let's go back to the satellite image for a second. And just take a look at the eye here. Watch the last couple frames. See how it's kind of morphed a little bit. To me, because of the elevation that the Dominican Republic has, it's got the highest peaks in the Caribbean, kind of on the center of the island there. It's probably disrupting the structure a bit, and you see the eye kind of morphing around. It's not a very smooth circle. So that tells me we're not doing any strengthening at the moment. In fact, we might even be doing a little bit of weakening. The good news is I believe that it's category 5 days or over. I don't want to say it couldn't possibly become a category 4 again, especially why it's here. You got a lot of warm water and ambient winds aren't that strong, which would allow the storm to continue to build. But it's over cooler waters than it was yesterday, and a little less favorable atmospheric conditions than yesterday. So it shouldn't be become a 5 anymore. But it still is going to be a very strong hurricane. After the Dominican Republic here, it has to deal with it all day today. It's already, some of the other bands are already getting up towards Turks and Caicos. They're next up tonight and through tomorrow morning. They'll have to deal with it. It doesn't look like they'll deal with the landfall. In fact, we have the latest track from the National Weather Service. Let's go ahead and throw that up. Here's all the latest data. This was the 11 o'clock advisory that came out. Current winds 150 miles an hour. It's a slow mover now, northwest at 9, but northwest is better than west. Irma was still going west at this point, and that's why she threatened Florida. As we continue to move northwest and eventually turn north-northwest, and then hopefully north and east, we will continue to see the effects lessen on the islands there. Now, they did extend hurricane watches, tropical storm watches out for some of the eastern portions of the Bahamas there. You see those in yellow kind of highlighted on your screen, as even though the hurricane itself is going to stay well offshore, you're going to have enough effects there in terms of storm surge, high waves, rough surf, and some tropical storm force gusts are absolutely possible as we get towards it.
Oh my goodness! So it does look like there's a good trajectory there. It's going. Hopefully, we'll go out, like you said. Hopefully, go northeast.
But this is another kind of point I want to make up. It does look like, and you know what? Let's go ahead and switch over here.
Oh yeah.
And we'll go through some of the latest models. These are the latest hurricane models that kind of came out with the storm.
Perfect.
So you can see everything's keeping. You see the USA and us here in DC just off the or to the extreme left-hand side of the screen there. All the models are keeping it out to sea, which is good, but they're not keeping it that far out to sea. We've mentioned before how things can always change at this range, so we still need to watch it. But they're not keeping it far enough out to sea that we won't see any effects here, particularly on our beaches. So next week, what can we expect to see here from Maria as she kind of comes up the coastline, sort of like Jose did? This is kind of what I think we're going to be expecting. Why don't you take CS2? And this is what, as of things right now, again, a lot like what Jose did. All these locations I've kind of highlighted in red along the coastline there could see absolutely dangerous surf. I know surfers love it, but it can be dangerous. Never surf alone in these conditions if people are thinking about going out and surfing. Always have a buddy, have someone know where you are.
People love this, though.
They do.
These extreme people love this because it rarely comes to the East Coast except for hurricane season, right?
Hurricane season, that gives you some very big swells. And I'm not a surfer guy myself,
Yeah.
but for the surfer guys out there do love these type of weathers. And anytime we have a nor'easter come up in winter, they do the same thing. Even though it's 20 degrees outside, they're running out to get some surfing in because of how big the waves are. Again, obviously, if you're a rookie, I have to say, please don't do it. But the guys that do it all their lives, even if I told them not to, they would do it anyway. So I just emphasize, be safe, have a buddy, have someone watching you, and be careful if you're going to go out and do it.
And guys, if you're just joining us, this is Mike Thomas, our meteorologist. You've probably seen him before on the stream. Just filling us in on the hurricane update as we've seen this season go strong. We have another really cool satellite image map to show you guys. Should we do that next?
Yeah. And quickly, just here for Maria's effects here locally, in terms of the wind and the beach erosion. Any gusty winds would stay on the beaches. We may get some clouds here. If we're unlucky, we may get a spotty shower or two, a lot like what Jose did, but for the most part, it's not going to be a huge deal here, aside from the beach erosion and the high surf. The timing on it is like next week, starting kind of Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday. It will slow down. I can't show you the full graphic, but if we went through the full graphic, you'd see why it's going to slow down. It's going to run into an area of high pressure to the north that will slow it down like Jose, and kind of cause it to spin for a couple days before it gets kicked out with a cold front later next week. It'll be a slow mover. It will not be as strong as it is right now when it gets up here. Water's too cool. Atmospheric conditions aren't favorable for keeping it super strong. But just like Jose was still a hurricane up till yesterday, it could hang on to at least Category 1 strength for a little while there. Yeah, let's show it. Speaking of Jose.
So cool, this image.
And this is our new satellite that's up from the National Weather Service. This is GOES 16, which they just put up this year. Absolutely beautiful.
Really cool.
It's so nice because of how detailed. The other satellites that were out there were really old and dated camera-wise, but this has some of the latest high-tech cameras on it.
Yeah.
And
what is this exactly looking at? Like what time span? It's multiple hours.
Let's see. This looks like a loop of the past 2 hours.
Oh yeah, there it is. So it tells you.
So maybe two and a half hours.
Gives you a loop of 2 hours.
Yeah. So you can see there's Maria down there, just north of the Dominican Republic, right at the bottom of your screen there. And you can see how it's headed up towards the Turks and Caicos region. It does look like on its current path it would threaten Florida, but the good news is you got an area of high pressure just off to the east of it that's starting to strengthen that will continue to trend it north. So I don't have anything for those wondering about Florida. Gulf Coast. I have nothing that shows any effects there other than some high surf. And maybe the beaches have a windy day or two, but nothing too extreme, especially nothing close to what Irma was. Not even the same ballpark.
So what's up close near to like New Jersey, New England? Is that Jose?
That's Jose. Still
moving on. It looks
around.
Bigger than maybe it is.
I think it's a little bit of the angle of the satellite there, but it's still a big storm. It still has good spin to it, but it's just lost a lot of its energy. It's pulling up a lot of cool water that far north, and we're down at last check, I believe, to 60 miles an hour, and it's expected to continue the weekend over the next 24 hours. So
my goodness.
They still have tropical storm warnings out for Cape Cod, Nantucket, those islands up there that are still seeing some winds. And last check, I saw some gusts of 40, 50 miles an hour up there. And extreme, same kind of deal that we're going to be dealing with Maria next week: high surf, beach erosion, that kind of thing. But they've certainly seen worse up there. And they're going to have to deal with Jose for the next couple of days because it's not moving much. But eventually we will get rid of it.
Good to know. Guys, if you are watching the stream live with us, happy Thursday. But if you're watching this later, this is the update for right now. So Thursday morning.
This is as of, what time is it? 11.
Almost noon on Thursday. And so we've been tracking this, and we're hoping to kind of see it dissipate out through the week, right?
That's going to dissipate. If it stays strong enough, some of its remnants could combine with Maria as she heads north. That would not create any sort of a superstorm. I've seen lots of little web chats about that. No, that's not how nature works. Actually, it's actually kind of good that Jose's there. I can't go into too much detail on this because it's a little too mathy and nerdy. But if Jose wasn't where it was, there would be a much better chance that Maria would make landfall somewhere in the U.S. But because Jose's there, it's creating sort of a weakness in the pattern that's going to allow Maria to come up and go out. So totally weird to say, but Jose's probably going to end up being a storm that saves the United States from a possible Maria landfall.
It's crazy.
Kind of crazy. Yeah, that's again just the way Mother Nature works.
Cool
sometimes.
sciencey stuff, though.
So
that's great.
That's kind of it for Maria, and that's the latest there. How about we've had so much bad news in the Mother Nature
the
department.
Good news?
Let's give it the good news for the DC folks.
All right.
How about that weekend forecast?
Yeah.
First full weekend of fall.
Tomorrow is fall. Last day of summer today. Last full day.
4:02 tomorrow. We go from summer to fall. So yeah,
I know. I'm feeling the same
summer.
sentiment.
Although you're even though the word summer is gone, the summer feel.
The effects are
look at
intense.
87 degrees, sunshine.
Humid
Saturday.
too, or
not that bad. There'll be a little bit, but not awful. Because thanks to Jose, it's bringing in some dry air. I think as we head into next week, as Maria gets a little closer, we may get a little bit more humidity. She'll throw a little bit more moisture in the atmosphere.
Okay.
But as far as weekend goes,
beautiful weekend.
For fall, if you like warm weather, beautiful weekend. If you're ready for it, which I am, I'm ready to open my windows.
For that fall crisp weather, football season.
Cut the AC off so that my power bill's not $250 every month.
I know.
That would be super nice. So I'm ready for fall.
So there's good and bad.
But yeah, again, it'll be a beautiful weekend. You have outdoor activities. You want to get out and grill. The pools aren't open anymore, but you want to find a lake or a stream locally to hop into.
Yep.
Do that. It'll be a gorgeous weekend.
And last question: is there anything left? Because people keep asking, brewing in the deep Atlantic. Do you think we're done after Maria?
No, I don't think we're done.
Really?
Remember, we're only halfway through the hurricane
season. Which is nuts to think about because you always forget it goes through November.
Right, it goes all the way through November. But we're over the hump, so to speak. We're past the peak day, which was September 11th. So things should start getting progressively quieter. But October is typically a busy month, and in particular, October, November, when you get storms, tends to be around.
Hey, Tucker.
He's still here?
Look at
Still
him.
Here. I'm leaving soon, I promise.
I'm sure he's
so good.
Nice, Mikey.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Oh.
Thanks, Tuck. I'm going to have to go.
Interruption.
I'm going to visit HR after this. All right.
Everybody says. Okay, thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah, to that last point, like I was saying, typically when you get more storms in October and November, they tend to be Caribbean, particularly Western Caribbean, because that's where the warmest waters have to be. We do have some model hints.
Western, okay.
So towards the Yucatan, south of Cuba.
Oh, yes, we were talking about yesterday.
That's another breeding ground for hurricanes that hasn't really been that active this year. It's been more of these storms that come across the Atlantic. That's more typical of August, September, because you get a lot of storms coming off Africa at that time. Right now, we got an area of high pressure that's going to take over out there, so I see less activity for at least the next couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Beyond, we'll see, but for at least the next couple of weeks after this, I think the Atlantic, that part of it takes a break. Then we have to kind of shift focus and watch the Yucatan-ish area for something.
Oh yeah, we'll
up.
take a look there.
And then the threat with those Yucatan.
That's down south of Cuba to the west of Cuba.
You see Florida there. There's Cuba down just south of Cuba and kind of to the west towards the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, where I'm going in October.
You are?
I am.
Where?
I'm
that Tulum?
To Cancun. I'm gonna relive the college glory days.
I was just gonna say that's the only place I've been to on the Yucatan, but there's so much history. It's really pretty.
I can't wait, and we might take a journey one day and go see some of the I think it's the Aztec ruins.
Yeah, you have to. There's Mayan, and there might be some Aztec, but definitely the Mayan in Tulum, Mexico.
Yes,
as a must.
I think that was the place to go. So I'm totally gonna try.
It's the place.
And see, I'll be down there for like 4 or 5 days.
Hopefully everything will be totally dissipated, right?
Well, here's the problem.
When are you there?
I'm there the 5th. I fly down on the 5th, and their modeling is suggesting that something's going to be popping up in that neck of the woods.
Okay.
Like around that
time. Oh my goodness, you might be there to live report. Bring it back. No, you want to be on vacation.
I'm hoping to enjoy my vacation.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much as always, guys. We'll bring it back into the newsroom here, and Mike, you're going to go get some rest.
Yes, I'm going to go. Well, I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to go.
Oh, good. Packing it in.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Thank God it's almost Friday.
Oh, yes, tomorrow.
But yeah, ending on a serious note, thoughts and prayers to everybody going through what Hurricane Maria did and what is yet to come. I mean, there's still going to be damage in, obviously, the Dominican Republic. Still going to be damage in Turks and Caicos, even without a landfall. And then beyond there, we'll wait and see. And then same deal with Mexico. I mean, terrible images.
Terrible images, and we're going to continue to bring you those images, guys, as we have them today. That's pretty much what we have coming in today, which is unfortunate. It's sort of a sad live news day, but that's what we're watching. So
yeah, these natural disasters they're not any fun, honestly, because they do so much death and destruction and damage. terrible storms to cover. That's why I prefer covering winter storms because most of the times they're 6 inches of snow doesn't usually kill them.
And you get out there in the snow. You told me you did that. You did
Yeah,
that many years.
The last 2 years ago when we had the big blizzard here,
You've been in it.
That was a blast. We had 22 inches of
Do
snow.
the snow
It was
angels.
awesome. Oh, of course.
You do everything in your lifetime.
Yeah.
So fun.
Can't wait.
Winter season. So you'll see more of Mike right here in this digital studio, and yeah, get used to his face.
Can't wait.
All right, guys. All right, thanks, Mike. He's gonna roll out, and we're gonna switch it over. Yeah, we'll kind of leave you with this bump shot of the satellite of the hurricane, and then we'll switch topics from there.
Channel 1. We're gonna give you a bump shot.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. What's up? A minute away. Oh, well, they've moved us back. You might be able to see they've set up skirmish lines to protect the area. It is not looking good for the man that was buried alive in that building. Now, you are looking live at the top of the collapsed building. We believe it's a 3-story building. You may be able to make out the firefighter in the black helmet. That's Roberto Padilla from Sacramento City Fire here volunteering his time. He is up there also with a member or members of the Israeli search and rescue team. They arrived from Israel. We believe they arrived early this morning and they reported for duty immediately. They are also here at the scene, as is the family of Eric. That is the man that is believed to be buried alive in what were the offices of Laboratorios Azteca, the Aztec Laboratories, a medical laboratory facility here in the Colonia Roma. We're on San Luis Potosí and the corner of Medellin. If you're familiar with this area, we know a lot of folks back home have family here in Mexico City. They know the Colonia Roma very well, Colonia Condesa. These are very popular areas with tourists from the United States. They come here for dinner, for the nightlife, and you are looking live now. Earlier, they brought out a dog. The dog had hit on a certain area. We believe that was a cadaver detection dog. Again, things are not looking very good here. There's also a gurney that has been brought in, and the Israeli search and rescue team has also been harnessed up to go in. We do want to report a bit of good news that we are getting out of the south of Mexico from the Rebsamen private school, where we believe children have just been rescued alive, crying. I bet the sound of those cries were music to their parents' ears. Children rescued. They've been buried for almost 48 hours, buried alive, as they were evacuating their school, their classes, just hours after they had evacuated in an earthquake drill, a mock simulation of a major earthquake. The entire school, businesses throughout Mexico evacuated, as well as schools. They rehearsed what they would do in case of an earthquake. Just 2 hours later, they were doing it for real. And as they climbed, as they were on this staircase trying to evacuate the building, I'm told the building collapsed around them. The bodies of 21 children have been pulled out from the rubble of that school alone. 5 adults, including a school teacher whose body was found last night. Now, you are looking live. Again, things not looking very good. And, you know, body language is very big here in Mexico City. And the search and rescue teams, they're communicating a lot with a type of sign language. You know, they lift up their arms in the air. They make a fist when they want everyone to be quiet. There are different signs. And while they were up there, all of a sudden they stopped. There was moments of silence. And then all of a sudden, the rescuers, they took their hard hats off and they made the sign of the cross. And of course, that's not what anybody wanted to see. There was no jubilee. There was no elation. People were clapping, as we've seen before when rescues have been made. So it continues. You can see that urban search and rescue member there digging through the rubble. We believe they're trying to get to where they believe Eric was last heard from or last seen. They are using very sophisticated thermal imaging cameras and very sophisticated microphones, listening devices. That is the latest. Of course, we're going to be following it right here on Good Day LA and Fox 11 here in Mexico City, giving you live coverage of the aftermath of the major 7.1 earthquake. And the death toll here in Mexico is now being reported at 250. We hope the number doesn't go up. I'm Gigi Graciette reporting live. We'll send it back to you in Los Angeles.
All right, guys. So obviously a pretty somber day when it comes to what we're covering live. Right now you're looking at a live shot of the UN General Assembly that goes on all week. And also concurrently, this search and rescue, now this shot kind of just froze on us in Mexico City, but you could hear from the live report that there are people, there are babies coming out crying, and they're coming out alive, which is a good sign. But there are also moments that are extremely sad, where the search and rescue team, some of them Israeli search and rescue team members who landed and started helping out right away, are giving the sign of the cross to sort of connotate someone that has passed away in the rubble. So we're going to have Tom Fitzgerald come over in just a second to talk some of the politics of the day, just so we can have our little daily dose of politics as well, and that's going to be coming up next. So we're going to hear from him about his story and some of the stuff that's going on. So he's coming over next, so we'll see him in a second. All right, guys, so we just got a new source saying Tom's here to say hey.
Source?
Yeah, our new
That
source. Wait, no,
sneaky.
he's our source. Also our source here. This is President Trump live meeting at a luncheon with the Prime Minister of Japan and South Korean president.
This looks like a fun group.
Yeah, so we were...
They've got a lot to talk about right now because of the fact that North Korea is kind of taking center stage at the UN General Assembly this year, obviously because of its nuclear testing, obviously because of its ICBM testing. And wouldn't you like to be a fly on the wall for this meeting here today?
And
they've got a lot to talk about. You know, they've been having stepped-up military exercises over the last couple of weeks in the region. North Korea has been rattling about that. There's Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who This is an interesting body language here right now.
Why?
With him and Secretary, the UN ambassador from the United States, Nikki Haley. There has been widespread reporting that there is a difference of opinion between Tillerson and Nikki Haley over the Iran nuclear agreement. Tillerson reportedly wanting to preserve the framework of the agreement, if not retain the framework as it stands. Apparently Nikki Haley not. Siding with the president apparently and wanting to withdraw the United States from the Iran nuclear agreement. There's H.R. McMaster standing there. So you pretty much got the entire top echelon here of the United States foreign policy arm. Steve Mnuchin, the vice president, and Rex Tillerson.
There they are having a chat, and the president should be out soon.
Some kind of photo opportunity here, I guess, before the president comes in. The president, there he is.
There he is.
He's been staying at, get out of the way, Rex. He's been staying at Trump Tower while he's been in New York for the UN General Assembly. We understand at the end of today's session, though, he's going to be traveling to the Trump National Golf Course in Bedminster, New Jersey, where I believe he will be spending the rest of today.
So nice. So we'll listen to see if he has a few words, and then
I'm sure he will have a few words. Look, he's pulling some of those out right now.
Papers.
Today I'm announcing a new executive order just signed that significantly expands our authorities to target individuals, companies, financial institutions that finance and facilitate trade with North Korea. As I outlined at my address to the United Nations General Assembly, North Korea's nuclear weapons and missile development is a grave threat to peace and security in our world, and it is unacceptable that others financially support this criminal rogue regime. The brutal North Korean regime does not respect its own citizens or the sovereignty of other nations. Our new executive order will cut off sources of revenue that fund North Korea's efforts to develop the deadliest weapons known to humankind. The order enhances the Treasury Department's authorities to target any individual or entity that conducts significant trade in goods, services, or technology with North Korea. And I'm very proud to tell you that, as you may have just heard moments ago, China, their central bank, has told their other banks, that's a massive banking system, to immediately stop doing business with North Korea. This just happened, just reported. In addition to everything else, what we will do is identify new industries, including textiles, fishing, information technology, and manufacturing, that the Treasury Department can target with strong sanctions. And Secretary Mnuchin is representing the Treasury Department, is here today, to prevent sanctions evasion. The order also includes measures designed to disrupt critical North Korean shipping and trade networks. For much too long, North Korea has been allowed to abuse the international financial system to facilitate funding for its nuclear weapons and missile programs. The United States has had representatives working on this problem for over 25 years. They have done nothing. That's why we're in the problem that we're in today, in addition to, frankly, other countries not doing what they should have done. Tolerance for this disgraceful practice must end now. Our new order will give the Treasury Department the discretion to sanction any foreign bank that knowingly conducts or facilitates significant transactions tied to trade with North Korea. And again, I want to just say and thank President Xi of China for the very bold move he made today. That was a somewhat unexpected move, and we appreciate it. New authority in this area applies to any activity that occurs following my signature on the executive order, which I have actually just signed. Foreign banks will face a clear choice: do business with the United States or facilitate trade with the lawless regime in North Korea, and they won't have so much trade. This new order provides us with powerful new tools, but I want to be clear, the order targets only one country, and that country is North Korea. The regime can no longer count on others to facilitate its trade and banking activities. Many countries are working with us to increase economic and diplomatic pressure on North Korea, but I continue to call on all those responsible nations to enforce and implement UN sanctions and impose their own measures like the ones I am announcing today. I must tell you that this is a complete denuclearization of North Korea that we seek. Cannot have this as a world body any longer. In just a few minutes, Prime Minister Abe, President Moon, and I are going to discuss what more we can do working together. We've had a very, very close relationship. I think our nations have become closer because of this. I know it's going to be a great meeting. Our alliance with South Korea and Japan has never been stronger than it is today. We share a commitment to creating a world where strong and independent nations honor their people, respect their sovereignty, respect the sovereignty also of other nations, and promote peace. Thank you very much, and I'd like to start off President Moon to say a few words, please.
Recently, we are seeing the provocation coming from Korea, and the Japanese people must have gone through a big shock, and I really understand the big concerns, the huge concerns that Japanese people may have.
All right, so that was President Trump's words. We're going to pull out of that for the other.
There's some news there.
Yeah.
The news is that he's announcing a big round of financial sanctions against North Korea. Now, it should be pointed out, we've tried sanctions before. However, the president just now announcing that President Xi of China and the National Bank of China, he says, will be joining in this. That's huge. China is North Korea's largest trade partner. So if the National Bank of China is now going to join in on economic sanctions and penalties against North Korea, the thought is maybe that will finally get Kim Jong-un's attention and turn away from this path that they are on right now with these constant nuclear tests, missile tests, and the rhetoric they've been spewing out all over the world. So this is a big deal.
Yeah, interesting. I want to switch gears a little bit too, because we're gonna keep on the stream later when we have it. But let's talk more, Tom, about some other stuff that's been in the news. We wanted to talk about this yesterday, but we didn't get to it because you had some busyness to get to.
I had some busyness to get to.
Your story, your stuff.
I gotta work.
I know. Yeah, I know. We gotta work. So Jimmy Kimmel is not backing down. If you guys watch this, he's not backing down on on his late show last night.
I watched it because before the show aired, there were some tweets going out that Kimmel was going to respond to Senator Cassidy, and he did. And this is kind of now advanced past the point of people's politics. That when, whether it be Jimmy Kimmel or whether it was Jon Stewart, a lot of times people who have these national platforms like this, in a lot of ways, have the ability to get a lot more attention than the senators and the congressmen when they're talking about this. So the fact that Jimmy Kimmel has, kind of personalized this in a way to his own story and the story of his own son has gotten a lot more people attuned to what was going on with the effort to repeal Obamacare. Now, Nancy Pelosi came out yesterday and said that the reason the Republicans were trying to get this through was because of the fact that, the world's attention was turned to hurricanes and the natural disasters and things like that. But the reality of it is, if they are unsuccessful on this, this would be their third attempt and failure to, in effect, repeal and replace Obamacare. They've gotten nowhere on this. And it's not quite clear as to whether or not they're going to get anywhere on this one. Lisa Murkowski, although she has kind of said some things that were not definitively yes or no, we don't have a definitive yes or no out of her yet. Governors across the country are beginning to come out against this, and interestingly, some on the Republican side as well. Governor Larry Hogan has come out against the Cassidy-Graham bill. Chris Christie has had some very unpleasant things to say about this. These are Republicans saying these things. Now, what is this? When you look at what the bill is, a lot of it basically says we're going to take this money and we're going to get government control out of the state handling of health care. I think a fair comparison would be car insurance. The federal government, for the most part, does not handle your car insurance. The states handle that. So that's how they're selling this. In practice, though, the whole reason that it was done as a national approach was because you had to pass a penalty, a tax penalty, if you did not cover yourself by purchasing one of these plans. That was what kept it alive in this U.S. Supreme Court when I covered those U.S. Supreme Court challenges to it, that the IRS, the federal government, did have the ability to impose this tax if you did not get one of those policies. That could completely blow up the structure of how the American Health Care Act stands and operates right now if you were suddenly send this out into 50 different directions. Now, proponents of it say, well, if you look at states like Maine or Texas, this would be a better deal for them. But it's not quite clear if this thing stands up when you break it up into 50 parts. Are all states going to have, the mandate for coverage? Are all states going to have protections for pre-existing conditions? Are all states going to mandate that 26-year-olds are allowed to remain on their parents' insurance? Now, Senator Cassidy, this is how he got into this tiff with Jimmy Kimmel.
What's the back and forth sort of
Well,
now?
he had said during an interview with Jimmy Kimmel that a lot of these protections were going to remain in place. And as we know, I won't regurgitate the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing, but Jimmy Kimmel came out and said that he lied.
Right, he did.
Say that. Senator Cassidy came back out this morning on Fox and said that Jimmy Kimmel just doesn't understand the plan. But I think in a lot of ways it says a lot about where the Democrats are right now. If their biggest kind of voice on this is none of their leadership, but Jimmy Kimmel. And Jimmy Kimmel, is a smart guy. He's an entertainer, but if you look at what Jon Stewart was able to mobilize in his year in the anchor chair at the Daily Show, Republicans would probably be smart to not dismiss him because he is a comedian and because he is an entertainer. He has a very large audience at his disposal.
Huge platform, right?
And he seems to be able to articulate a lot of these arguments in a way that Nancy Pelosi cannot, and in a way that Chuck Schumer cannot. It's one of the reasons voices like his are kind of rising to the surface as quickly as they have, because there's not a lot of other people. And you heard, we were listening yesterday. There was a Democratic rally on the east front of the Capitol yesterday. Bernie Sanders came out and did not really gel as to what the Democratic position is, what the Democratic plan is. Cory Booker, said a lot of rah-rah things, but never really kind of laid out. When you heard Kimmel talk about this in that original monologue that he did, he talked about coverage. He talked about what this would actually practically mean, using his own son as an example. Politically, not that we're in the business of giving people advice, they might want to take a look at how the response has gone not to just what Kimball said, but how he said it, because people seem to be digesting his points in a way that they're not digesting it from their own Democratic leadership.
And people are really taking it and going with it. I know social media is reposting all the numbers of everybody to call, and he even flashed that up on the screen, I believe. And anyway, it's running a long time.
Yeah,
so,
well, from what I understand, the switchboard at the U.S. Capitol building is lighting up.
Oh yeah,
Because,
did you get make some calls about that?
Because not only are people using the main switchboard number, they're actually going out and getting the phone numbers of the individual members of Congress and calling them up as well. You know, it's like everybody always kind of talks about, what do we talk about all the time? Twitter and Facebook,
yeah.
social media. A letter
and a phone
call. If you want to get your representative's attention, if you want to get your senator's attention,
it's better.
It's still the same old, stalwart of how to get these people's attention. They pay attention to emails and to posts and all of that, but a paper letter, in this day and age in 2017, still carries weight. It's something tactile. It's something that lands in that office that will get their attention.
That actually does make sense too, because a lot of leadership is sort of, first of all, just frankly, in that generation.
Because nobody does it anymore. Who writes a letter? When's the last time you wrote a letter?
And it's unique, but also, these people in these high positions are usually in the generation of like not as digital as people are. Anyway.
I like writing letters still.
Yeah, I do too. All right, so totally switching gears too. This is your story today, a local story, and it has to do with what would we call it?
A Georgetown?
Yeah, the Georgetown thing.
Well, it's a hate crime, and
it's not. Hate crime.
It's not, just local. This is happening across the country. We've had several instances throughout the D.C. area, Maryland, of symbols of hate being displayed at universities.
So last night they found a swastika painted in a women's bathroom on Georgetown University.
Well, it is a campus dormitory. It is slightly located actually off campus, or you can, it's within the streets of Georgetown, but yeah, it's on campus. And the Georgetown University police are investigating this right now. This morning, this is so rude, I just realized I'm chewing gum while I'm talking to you.
I realized you were, but I didn't make anything of it.
Are we allowed to choose?
So rude on digital. Yeah, we're cash.
Okay. All right.
We do what we want here. Doing what we want.
Nasty habit. I'm down to my last.
I used to chew a lot of gum. I just don't anymore.
I'm down to my last vice. Chewing gum is my last.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one.
So back to the swastikas.
Yeah.
Somebody thought whether they thought this was a joke, whether they were trying to scare people, or whether they somehow thought that this was an expression of what they think. The bottom line is Georgetown University is not taking this as a joke. They're taking this deadly seriously. And they have opened up an investigation right now into who is behind this.
And what's crazy is this all comes during Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year.
Yeah, and that's something that's gotten a lot. No,
right.
Well, they are investigating the timing on this, because the fact that here you have a major Jewish holiday, and then this happens right at the same time, and apparently there was a message attached to this as well. So it's not just a swastika, there was a message attached to this as well. They are investigating. There are very clear laws in the District of Columbia when it comes to this kind of stuff, and they say they are right now in the process of this investigation. They're trying to get information from people on campus who might know something about this, somebody who might have seen somebody in that building. They're most likely reviewing security footage as well.
Of course, yeah.
So now, whether or not they have security cameras in a bathroom seems unlikely.
Right. Or in the building, though.
Which the person who did this may or may not know that. That this would be an area where they could possibly do this kind of thing and not be caught on camera because of the obvious privacy issues about having any kind of camera in a bathroom. That would be understandable if there was not a security camera in there. However, we got to say there's been other incidents like this. We had an incident on the campus of George Washington University not so long ago, about a week ago to be exact, where somebody was distributing anti-Muslim advertisements, and then doctoring those flyers to make it appear like they came from a conservative campus group that had nothing to do with it.
So bad. Did you cover that one?
Yes. Last semester at AU, last spring, we had somebody who was hanging bananas.
I remember that. I was here for that. Yeah.
So this is not limited to one campus. This is not limited to one state or one area. This is happening around the country, and it's perplexing as to why at a place of education someone would think that this is either an expression of their own beliefs,
right,
or something that would in any way contribute to that campus community life. It's you know,
yeah,
you put yourself in the shoes of the person who's that's directed at. You put yourself in the shoes, you know, of a student who is Jewish. You put yourself in the shoes of a person who's African American. What that is like to have that happen on your campus, which while you were at school is your home.
Yeah.
It's not just the place where you go to school, it's your home. So for somebody to come into your home and do that is even more of a violation than it already was to begin with. And police are adamant at Georgetown, and I just spoke with them a little while ago, that they are pursuing this seriously and looking to make an arrest and looking to press charges in this case. I was going to ask that. Where do you start when you cover stuff like this? Because you've done this before. You talk to police, you talk to administrators, and possibly even the Jewish group on campus. Would you, or what do you think your day will take you? Well, yeah,
little behind the scenes of Fitz's.
Well, you want to talk to
reporting.
You want to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
You can. Talk to the university. Talk to the police department. Talk to the people who live there. You know, in a case like this, it's not uncommon that we would reach out to the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, who is being kind of on the front lines of this battle for a very, very long time. And, you know, disturbingly, they've had to deal with it probably now a lot more than they ever did before in recent years on college campuses. You know, we've gotten to know the folks over at the ADL a lot better lately because we have to keep going back to them because people are doing stuff like this on campus. Does it start with campus police and then go to DC police, or how does that work with the police investigation? Well, the Georgetown University Police are a police department. They are their own, right? They are a real police department. Right. A lot of the universities have their own police departments. A long time ago, former DC police chief Charles Ramsey, told me that there's something like, if I can remember correctly, there's something like 27 police departments that operate within the District of Columbia. Because universities and then any other groups that have their own? I think that's the number he told me. You know, you think of the FBI police, all different kinds of universities have police, Treasury Department has police, Uniform Secret Service police. So, you know, when you think about it, there are a lot of police departments. Georgetown University Police is in charge of this investigation. However, they say that they are working in conjunction with the Metropolitan Police, which makes a lot of sense because, you know, DC police have a lot more ability, you know, at certain things. But, you know, this is something that happened on campus. It happened in an area where Georgetown University Police, so they are the lead, what we call the lead investigatory agency. But they are working very closely, they say, with NPD. Okay, great. Well, it's a good synopsis of what you're going to be doing today. Another tough one, hate crime locally. And then we just heard that bell ring. That means a little bit of breaking news, and I overheard what they were saying. Apparently there's a small aircraft down at the Leesburg airport, the private airport down there, so we're going to send our chopper. We'll see if we have some footage of that. I'm hearing, if I overheard her right, it's not too serious, no injuries, so, but we'll see. Well, that's the best result you can hope for in that, because, you know, those things, if it's a small plane, which we've seen a lot of those crashes on the highways lately. I've just taken a lot to air. So. Well, yeah, and you know, it's private aviation is a big thing in this area. I've got a phone call. Yeah, go do it. And that's our little Fitz daily mix. We'll see if we get him back in a second. He's grabbing this phone call now. All right, guys, we're going to bring you back to this live look of the search and rescue that is ongoing in Mexico City. As we have more in the newsroom that comes in, anything breaking, any chopper video of that plane crash that we're just hearing about, we're going to bring that to you as well. So you can stay on with us here. And Fitz, did you get any new information on your? Hey, did you get any new? What was that? Just some housekeeping stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Work housekeeping stuff.
Oh, okay. Cool. So yeah. Anyway, just explaining what that meant for our breaking news. But
Do you want me to tell you what the housekeeping is?
sure.
People will be bored by this.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a photographer who's sick today.
Oh, okay.
So it creates a lot of moving parts.
Okay.
Almost like a shell game where this person has to go over here and this. So
Right.
we're just in the process of changing photographers.
Oh, so you had to switch your guy.
I had to switch my guy. My guy is off someplace else, and I am going to work with somebody else.
Ooh.
After they get, this is.
Well, it's interesting.
Yeah,
hey,
it's every
it's
day,
inside
you know?
behind the scenes of the newsroom. So yeah, I think those are sort of the things we were going to chat about.
What about healthcare? Did you look at that? Talk about that?
Just the stuff that was
The bill?
interesting was
Yeah.
like
so
what's going to happen next week.
Cassidy Kimmel thing. We should talk
Right.
about where the bill is right now.
Lindsey Graham spoke a little bit yesterday.
So they are saying that they think they are moving in the right direction. Senator McCain had said that he wanted a regular order, so that's going to mean hearings. We're still waiting for a CBO score from the Congressional Budget Office to find out exactly what this thing costs. There are some senators who say that, I'm not going to move forward on this unless I get a CBO score.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unclear as to whether or not Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is going to wait for that because he says he wants a vote by next week. So the CBO score was kind of what sunk the two previous efforts because when it came out, people looked at the numbers and they didn't think the numbers looked right for them. So that kind of helped in its defeat. So Mitch McConnell may or may not want a CBS score on this before they take this to a vote.
And the vote is next week, or they're
talking
wanting
about
it to
they'd
be
like a vote next week, but also some other people are saying, well, we don't want to do a vote until we know what the Congressional Budget Office says about this. So there's some moving parts that are still being decided. Now the House is out right now, so if the Senate takes this up, even if the Senate does pass it, it would have to go to the House, and then that would be an interesting reversal because the previous two efforts to do this started in the House and then went to the Senate. And then you have a situation where it's starting in the Senate and now would move over to the House. They were able to pass their, they missed the first time. If you remember correctly, the House did try initially, and then that went down to defeat. But they were able to kind of reconstitute themselves and go back and pass it. So it's not exactly clear, even if the Senate does this, what the House Republicans will think of this. Because remember, when we talk about those midterm elections, we keep kind of saying Congress is up. It's not really all of Congress that is up. It's most of the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is the one that is on that 2-year cycle. Yeah. Every 2 years, the House of Representatives is up.
It's a big year.
Even though you'll have a couple of Senate races that will be in play, it's the whole House. So if you're a congressman, this is a lot more of an immediate concern right now, maybe than some of the senators who are voting on this because they have 6 years between election cycles.
And then the bill itself, it's not going to be black and white, right? It's going to be some compromise.
None of it is black and white. And that's
it's
the
never
problem with it because,
right.
No,
people aren't going to be perfectly happy, right?
No, nobody's ever happy.
Yeah,
No,
and there's that.
No, people weren't happy with Obamacare.
Yeah,
there were Democrats. I covered a lot of those hearings. One of the differences in the process, though, I will tell you, having covered the Obamacare run-up and then covering this, is that it seemed like we went to 1 million hearings during the Obamacare run-up. Now, finally, it got down to the point where Nancy Pelosi made the infamous comment, well, we have to pass it so we can see what's in it. And that ultimately came back to bite them because clearly it came out later that we didn't exactly know everything that was in that bill, and they didn't know everything that was in that bill before they voted on it.
I forgot that same. Was that a hot mic issue, or she just said it?
No, it was no hot mic.
She just went with it.
She said it, yeah. So, in some ways, when you watch this, having covered the Obamacare thing, there's some deja vu going on here about how a lot of times some of these lawmakers just, and this goes in general for all political parties, a lot of times they are not fully vested in what's in the legislation they're voting on. They leave it up to staff. They don't write the bills.
Right.
Staff writes the bills. They rely and depend on staff to tell them these things. But there are very few, there are out there. I could name a couple, but I don't want to start naming names, but because be here while. There are members who can quote the stuff off the top of their head and they know it. off the top of their head fresh. You know, when he was on the budget committee, Paul Ryan was one of those guys. Paul Ryan was one of those guys we could get, you know, so I'll be bipartisan here. When they were both in the budget committee, Paul Ryan and I would say Chris Van Hollen were two of those guys who you could go to, and they would know it almost better than their staffs. In fact, they would know it better than their staffs. They just knew this stuff off the top of their head. They knew it cold. You go to some other members of Congress, you go to some other members of the U.S. Senate, not so much. So that factors into how they vote on this thing, because they're relying, a lot of these people are relying on staff to tell them what's in it, what's not in it. And if the staff doesn't brief them correctly, well, then that becomes a major issue in how they vote on this.
Yeah, I have even just some friends and old roommates from who work in Congress and tell me that they have to know all that stuff. So it's interesting. We're coming up soon on Impressor. We're going to bring it to you live. We were ready for this. Senators Cornyn and Cruz are going to be there. There he is. There's the hard hat.
I think I saw.
Check it out. It's a Harvey. Yeah, Paul Ryan is there.
Flexing his guns.
And we were. Yeah, they are in T-shirts. Look at that. There's Cornyn.
There he is.
Oh yeah, there he is.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So we're gonna. This is a Harvey recovery press conference.
Right. There's John Cornyn
in Houston.
Ted Cruz.
Well, we are.
There we go.
We're gonna go into
be
it.
here with the Speaker of the House of Representatives and my colleague Senator Cruz, Representative Pete Olson, whose district we're in, together with all of the Texas congressional delegation, demonstrating our support for the people who lost so much during Hurricane Harvey, and demonstrating the commitment of the entire Texas delegation, working with our leadership in the House and the Senate to make sure that Texans get the help they need to recover. And the sort of basic things that people need are what the Garcia family needs here today, and we've been trying to help a little bit with some of the debris removal. But earlier we flew around the city and the county so the Speaker could get a good picture of what challenges lie ahead for us as we go back to Congress in October and move at least 2 more relief packages for Texas and Irma and other disasters around the country. We're delighted also to have the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee here with us today. He's the guy who writes the checks, and so it's important for him to be here together with John Cornyn, who chairs the Homeland Security Subcommittee in the House. So, Speaker, thank you for coming. It means the world to us that you're here. Appreciate your leadership and your friendship and your generous response to those who are in need. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. First, I want to start off by saying right now our hearts and our prayers are with our fellow citizens in Puerto Rico who are just experiencing Hurricane Maria. The second point is I just want to say how impressed I am with this Texas delegation. This Texas delegation is so focused on making sure that the aid is brought, that the recovery occurs. But the thing I'm most impressed about, I've got to tell you, are Texans. I am just most impressed with the Garcia family, with the spirit that we see here of people who are ready to rebuild and recover. And so the reason we're here on this bipartisan delegation with people from around Congress is to make sure that Texans know that you are in our hearts and our prayers, that aid is coming, that we will be doing more to make sure that we can respond to this disaster. We just flew over just the Houston area, and just that area, the devastation, is something that none of us have ever seen before in our lives. So this is one of those unprecedented disasters that will require a very bold response at all levels of government. And so we're here to listen, we're here to learn, we're here to appreciate, but we're also here to thank the people who are doing the recovery efforts. And I can't go on without saying the first responders. The first responders, from citizens to the Cajun Navy to the Coast Guard to EMS personnel, truly impressive. And so America is really in awe with how Texans have handled this hurricane and how they've helped each other from churches and local governments. So we just want people to know how much we appreciate them, and we're here to learn to make sure that the recovery efforts are well on their way and that there will not be any kind of delay with respect to the federal government. And with that, I'd like to ask another leader of your delegation, Senator Cruz, if you'd make a comment.
Sorry, tickle my throat.
Well, thank you, Paul. Let me just say we all collectively have just witnessed a miracle, which is members of Congress doing actual work. But I'll tell you what has really been miraculous has been how Texas has reacted in this past month. This hurricane has done devastating damage to the city of Houston, to the entire Gulf Coast, from Corpus Christi all the way to Louisiana. Community after community that's been devastated, from Victoria to Rockport to Port Aransas to Aransas Pass to Refugio to all the neighborhoods in and around Houston, Friendswood, Meyerland, Kingwood, Bel Air, to all of the areas going east, Beaumont and Port Arthur and Nederland and Orange. This state is hurting. And yet, in the face of the disaster, we've seen incredible bravery of Texans stepping forward and helping Texans, saving Texans. And the Texas congressional delegation is standing united. Standing united, Republicans and Democrats standing as one. Paul, we are grateful that you're here. Rodney, we are grateful that you're in our state of Texas. And we've taken a hard shot in the gut. But Texas will rebuild, Houston will rebuild, and that same spirit of bravery, that same spirit of unity and love that got us through the storm will bring us through rebuilding, and we'll come back even stronger. And the Texas delegation is committed to acting as one to ensuring that all of the relief the people of Texas need is going to be provided. The first $15 billion was already voted out by Congress, overwhelming bipartisan majorities in both houses. And we will have the resources to rebuild and to come out even stronger. And with that, I'd like to recognize Pete Olson, in whose district we're in.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome to my home, Texas 22. This congressional district is the biggest one in America. 850,000 people and growing. Bigger is better than Texas, right? That's important. But there's one silver lining in the storm. The whole world sees Texans for who they are. They see our neighbors picking up debris and putting it in special places. They see people running out in raging waters to rescue some person they don't even know. The world sees the true Texas spirit. Now, I have to talk about Speaker Paul Ryan. Paul and I share something in Congress that most people don't know about. For all Paul's life, he's been a fan of the Green Bay Packers.
Isn't this not going to hurt you?
For 3 years, I lived in Appleton, Wisconsin. I, too, became a fan of the Green Bay Packers. Now, we all are big fans of Houston Texans, right? Yeah. Paul's a fan because guess who plays for the Texans? Jerome Justin Watts. J.J. Watts is from Wisconsin. Now, when Paul became our speaker, we want to tell Paul that we have his back. And so we gave him this Packer jersey. Speaker won with the Texas flag, but by being here through his leadership, he's proven Paul Ryan has our back.
Well said.
All right. Thank you.
That guy will take some questions. Yes, sir.
You mentioned relief efforts. Is Congress considering passing funding that would pay for a coastal wall in Texas?
Yeah, so we're waiting to see from the administration what the request is. Right now, it's about this kind of damage control. Right now, it's about the cleanup and the recovery. I anticipate there'll be more than one piece of legislation moving through Congress. But right now, it's the short-term emergency needs, and we're waiting to hear from the administration because they're totaling up what's going on in Florida, in Texas. We'll see what's the story in Puerto Rico. Then we'll get a request from the administration. Then we will act on that request. I anticipate sometime in October is when it will take to get that data done. And then the bigger picture, whether it's bayous or levees or whatnot, that's something we're going to have a longer conversation about how best to make sure that we can guard against this from happening again.
Let me just add quickly, obviously this is about short term, mid-term, and long term, as the speaker said, and we're committed to all that. But as many of you know, the Corps of Engineers is coming up with a preliminary plan for the coastal spine to deal with the future prospect of a hurricane coming up the Houston Ship Channel and wreaking further havoc and devastation. So that's one of the longer term projects that we are working on as we are helping neighbors like the Garcias pick up after this, and also dealing with the intermediate needs that we'll be doing here in Congress in October again.
Were there any immediate needs that you saw today that are going to be a priority, housing or debris removal, or will it be?
All of it. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a question with the Corps of Engineer on Project Clear Creek. Clear Creek has been on the books from Congress since the 1960s. If it wasn't for Harris County, my subdivision, instead of having 2,500 homes flooded, probably would have had 5,000. How can we get the Corps to move ahead on Clear Creek?
You know, the problem there, Marie, is we keep growing. Every study we do about the flood maps is overwhelmed by the growth because it changes. But we have to get this bureaucratic nightmare over. I grew up there. I grew up at Click High School. Like you said, for 50 years. Okay, I'm sorry, 60. I was only here for 54 of that. It's long-term project, but right now our focus is on people getting them back in their homes, recovery, and taking actions to make sure this never happens again, at least to the extent it's happened. That means the coastal spine, that means maybe some new reservoir, west and northwest of the ones that had some problems. All options on the table. Right now we're behind our speaker. He's here to help us. And we're so grateful you're here, Paul.
Let me wait on that, Marie, if I can real quick. Clear Creek watershed study is what you're talking about.
Hey,
I grew up
Randy.
in the Pearland area.
Mike.
I grew up in the Pearland area. Clear Creek watershed study, as you know, has been going on for a long time. So here's what we need to do. We need to reprioritize. We need to clear their backlog. We need to increase our funding. That's the answer to the question.
Last question.
Is there any sense of the range of funding for this next round that you'll be asking for between Irma and Harvey?
It's really a question for the administration. We're waiting for the Office of Management and Budget to give us the totals of their requests, and they work with the state. They work with the delegation. So you have the federal government working with our federal delegation, with the governor, and they will process the request for that. The same conversation is happening in Florida as well right now.
Governor Ryan,
Abbott.
Governor Abbott met with Speaker Ryan last night.
We had dinner last night and discussed
And
just this
so
point.
Governor Abbott is the point person for the state response. Senator Cruz and I, the entire delegation, are working together to make sure we can document the appropriate requests so that the Office of Management and Budget can consider it, and so Congress can appropriate the next installment of relief.
It's going to be substantially more than the initial $15 billion. That was intended to be a down payment to have dollars immediately available. But we're working. The entire delegation is working closely with mayors and county judges and local officials and school superintendents to catalog exactly what the damage has been, the homes that have been damaged, the businesses, the schools. And I would note one of the really valuable things that we did today is that we took a helicopter tour with Speaker Ryan, going over the city of Houston and the areas that were flooded, but in particular looking at all the bayous, looking at the Barker and Addicks reservoirs, and the need to improve flood control throughout that region. And I think that aerial tour was particularly valuable. We had insight from the county on that and from the Army Corps of Engineers, and that's going to be a major topic of discussion for Congress, that in the process of rebuilding, we need to rebuild in a smart way to minimize the chances of another catastrophic storm in the future.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it.
I went to you.
I'm serious.
Hi, can I ask you one question about
Sure.
the Barker and Addicks thing?
Sure.
Sally with Fox. Sir, come up here a little bit. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, so Paul Ryan gets his very own Packers jersey with speaker on it. Never one to not talk Packers football. Let's listen into some of these interviews.
What do you say going forward to a lot of these families now about, who should be in charge of warning them, or did they just miss the fine print when they were buying their homes, or what should the warning be here?
For the future, the Corps has the obligation to notify all the public officials and the people that are going to get flooded. That is their obligation, whether they know it or not, or believe it or not. Their obligation is to notify the people who could be flooded and their homes destroyed.
Gotcha.
And then going forward, we need at least one more, maybe two reservoirs up in the northwest part of the region to prevent flooding in the future.
And did I hear correctly that the Corps said that's not feasible?
Yes, the Corps said at the meeting that it's not feasible, but other members of the Corps have said that's what we should do. So there's a disagreement, but the county region and all the folks that are elected officials need to come up with the plan. I think that is the plan that we should come up with, at least one, two reservoirs in the northwest area. Then we need to get funding to build it immediately.
Will you get the Corps to come? I heard you ask them. I couldn't hear their answer. Did they say yes?
They said they would be there tonight.
Okay, and
So
when is your meeting?
it's at 7 o'clock tonight at Lee Elementary in Bear Creek.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys.
Take care.
Good to see you.
Hope they show up.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
All right, looks like Fox got some quick interviews there after that press conference with Paul Ryan, Senators John Cornyn and Ted Cruz about continued recovery from Harvey down in Houston. Meanwhile, on a more somber note, still this live look at Mexico City as rescue efforts continue there, guys. Really sort of some somber news there with more than 230, 240 people killed in some of these building collapses. This is a live look at what we have going on down there. And we're going to leave it here for just a second. And then also Attorney General Jeff Sessions was in Charleston, West Virginia today to talk about the opioid crisis and their efforts there. We've been hearing a lot about this in the news. It's continuing on. We're going to bring his speech to you guys next. This happened just a few hours ago this morning in West Virginia. So that's coming up next. We'll leave you here with this shot as you check out this live recovery. I was reading about the Israeli rescue team also coming over, landing, and then right away picking up their stuff and helping out the efforts of search and rescue in Mexico. And you can see the shot just kind of froze. So sometimes we have in and out of that shot. But back in the newsroom for you guys, I'm Molly here in our newsroom. You can see behind me kind of quiet today as we kind of continue on with this digital show in the middle of the day, just bringing you all the live stuff that we have going on. So we're going to go over to that video now from this morning, the Attorney General talking about the opioid crisis in West Virginia.
Lobby about how tough it is to always do the right thing and to stand up for your beliefs. We applaud all of you for doing that as well. So as the Attorney General of the state of Alabama, a longtime conservative voice in the U.S. Senate, you add that to a distinguished legal career, and I'm going to read this part because it's incredibly impressive. Mr. Sessions has a distinguished legal career, first as a practicing attorney in Russellville and then in Mobile, following a 2-year stint as the assistant attorney, U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Alabama. He was nominated by Ronald Reagan, our hero, in 1981 and confirmed by the Senate as the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Alabama, a position he held for 12 years. And he was afterwards elected Attorney General of the state of Alabama in 1995. Now, the most important part of his resume is that he is the grandfather of 10, the father of 3, and someone who understands the importance of family and what makes families strong, which is one of the themes, Mr. Attorney General, we're going to spend time on today. We appreciate you all being here. Let's give another rousing hand for the Attorney General of the United States. Thank you. It is so good to be with you. In God's country indeed. Thank you. Please have a seat. Thank you so much. That's a great, encouraging welcome, and it's a pleasure to be back in Charleston. We were here a few months ago.
Guys, I want to jump over now to the UN General Assembly actually right now because we're getting in some live video, and Justin Trudeau, of course, Prime Minister from Canada, is up at the podium. So let's listen into his words, then we'll come back to this video from earlier this morning because we do have this as tape playback. So I want to go to the stuff that's live just to prioritize that. So now over to the UN General Assembly, which is happening all week. And here's Justin Trudeau.
And though residential schools are thankfully a thing of the past, too many Indigenous youth are still sent far away, far from their families, just to get the basic education most Canadians take for granted. And far too many Indigenous women live in Canada a life that includes threats of violence so frequent and severe that Amnesty International has called it a human rights crisis. That is the legacy of colonialism in Canada, of a paternalistic Indian Act, of the forced relocation of Inuit and First Nations communities, and a systematic denial of Métis rights and history, of residential schools that separated children as young as 5 years old from their families, punished them for speaking their own language and sought to extinguish indigenous cultures entirely. The good news is that Canadians get it. They see the inequities, and they're fed up with the excuses.
Hi, this is Molly.
And that impatience
hey,
gives us
Veronica.
a rare and precious opportunity
I
to
need
act.
to reform it. I've been using
We now have
throughout
before
like my
us
whole
an
tenure here,
opportunity
digital
to
host
deliver
and producer,
true,
because I'm doing the
meaningful,
new. I'm like pioneer.
and lasting reconciliation between Canada and First Nations, the Métis Nation, and Inuit peoples. Au moment où nous entreprenons de nous réconcilier, nous nous servirons pour nous guider des normes de base adoptées dans cette salle il y a 10 ans ce mois-ci. Je sais que par le passé, l'attitude du Canada à l'égard de la Déclaration des Nations Unies sur les droits des peuples autochtones a été décevante. On a activement fait campagne et voté contre, pour ensuite l'accepter sans grand enthousiasme, en disant qu'il s'agissait d'un document d'aspiration. Eh bien, ce ne sont pas des aspirations. La déclaration est très concrète pour les Autochtones et ceux qui ont travaillé si fort pendant si longtemps pour faire de ce document une réalité. In the words of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the Declaration provides the necessary principles, norms, and standards for reconciliation to flourish in 21st century Canada. That's not an aspiration. That's a way forward. Last year, at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, Canada's then Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs finally corrected Canada's position on the Declaration and announced that we are now, without qualification, a full supporter of the Declaration. In partnership with Indigenous peoples, we're moving ahead with a thorough review of federal laws, policies, and operational practices to get our house in order, to make sure that our government is meeting its obligations, including international obligations under the Declaration. We know that the world expects Canada to strictly adhere to international human rights standards, including the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and that's what we expect of ourselves, too. We are working closely with Indigenous peoples in Canada to better respond to their priorities, to better understand how they see and define self-determination, and to support their work of nation rebuilding. Along with Indigenous partners, we are co-developing programs to ensure the preservation, protection, and revitalization of Métis, Inuit, and First Nations languages. In short, we've been working hard in partnership with other orders of government and with Indigenous leaders in Canada to correct past injustices and to bring about a better quality of life for Indigenous peoples in Canada. I'll give you a few examples. Many will sound familiar to you because they are closely aligned with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, goals that apply to all of our countries without exception. Our efforts include investments to help bring safe and clean drinking water to all Indigenous communities, part of the UN's Sustainable Development Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. So far, more than 24 long-term drinking water advisories in Indigenous communities have been eliminated, and we have a plan to bring to an end those that remain. Ces efforts prennent la forme de nouveaux
These efforts
investissements
have
afin
taken
d'éliminer
shape in
les
the
écarts
term
en matière
of
d'éducation
new
dans les communautés des
to
Premières
eliminate
Nations.
gaps in education
Ces
in
nouveaux
First
accords
Nations communities.
reconnaissent le
These
pouvoir
new
et
agreements
l'autorité
recognize the
des
power
Premières
and
Nations.
the authority of the First
Ils
Nations.
prévoient également
They
les
also
moyens d'élaborer et de
provide
contrôler
for the
des
means to
systèmes
establish
d'éducation,
and to
des
oversee
systèmes
educational
dirigés
systems,
dans les communautés,
systems which will be
par
headed
les
in those
communautés et
communities
pour
by those
les communautés.
communities and for those communities.
Ces éléments importants concordent avec l'objectif
These
de
important
développement
elements are
durable
in
numéro
line
4,
with Sustainable Development
éducation
Goal 4,
de qualité.
quality education.
Pour beaucoup d'Autochtones au Canada,
For many Indigenous
ces
people in
investissements
Canada,
permettront entre
this
autres de préparer le
investment
terrain
will
en vue
help lay
d'atteindre
the
l'objectif de
foundation
développement
to
durable
achieve
numéro 8,
SDG 8,
travail décent
decent
et
work
croissance économique.
and economic growth.
Nous savons que personne
We
ne peut
know
espérer avoir une
that
chance
no one
réelle et
can
égale
have
de
a
réussir
real and fair
sans les
chance
éléments
of
suivants:
succeeding without
une
the
bonne
following:
santé,
good
une
health,
communauté solide,
a sound
un
community,
bon emploi bien rémunéré,
well-paying
une éducation
jobs,
de qualité et
quality
un endroit où
education,
vivre qui soit
and
sécuritaire
safe
et
and
abordable.
affordable housing.
Bien entendu,
Of course,
cela s'applique aux peuples
this
autochtones.
applies to the indigenous
That's why
peoples
our
as well.
efforts include working with indigenous communities to help build and refurbish homes. Construction work on nearly 4,000 homes has been completed or is underway, helping to fulfill SDG number 11, making communities safe and sustainable places to live. And across the country, we're also working on a national housing strategy to give more Canadians access to housing that is safe, affordable, and adequate. Our efforts also include a stronger focus in Indigenous communities across Canada and around the world on SDG number 5, combating gender-based violence and giving women and girls equal opportunities to succeed. We need women and girls to succeed because that's how we grow stronger economies and build stronger communities. That is why our government will be moving forward shortly with legislation to ensure equal pay for work of equal value. You see, the Sustainable Development Goals are as meaningful in Canada as they are everywhere else in the world. And we are committed to implementing them at home while we also work with our international partners to achieve them around the world. This is important because poverty and hunger know no borders. We cannot pretend that these solvable challenges happen only on distant shores. The need for greater equality and decent work, those are real and persistent human needs. One cannot afford to ignore, especially in our own countries. Il revient à chacun d'entre nous de faire en sorte que tous les gens, y compris les Autochtones, aient de meilleures opportunités. Nous avons la responsabilité de nous assurer que la véritable égalité soit sans condition. L'égalité s'applique à chacun d'entre nous, peu importe notre genre, nos origines, nos croyances, ou la personne que nous choisissons d'aimer. Et nous avons la responsabilité de mieux prendre soin de l'environnement que nous partageons tous, comme je l'ai dit ici à la cérémonie de signature de l'accord de Paris. Nous sommes tous concernés dans tous les sens du terme. Nous sommes tous responsables et nos nouvelles façons de faire doivent tenir compte de cette réalité. In Canada, this means new relationships between the government of Canada and Indigenous peoples. Relationships based on recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. Recently, we made changes to our own government structures to help with the transition to these new relationships with Indigenous peoples. We're dismantling the old colonial bureaucratic structures and creating a new Department of Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs led by Dr. Carolyn Bennett, an experienced and effective advocate for Indigenous peoples in Canada. In her new role, she will lead our government's effort to better support Indigenous peoples as they strengthen their distinct political, cultural, legal, and economic institutions and assume autonomy over their own affairs, including the recognition and implementation of self-government as an expression of self-determination. At the same time, we recognize that in Canada, the federal government has a historic responsibility for providing services to Indigenous peoples and an ongoing role to play. To better do this work, while at the same time supporting Indigenous self-determination, we will create, in consultation with Indigenous peoples, a new Department of Indigenous Services led by our former Minister of Health, Dr. Jane Philpott. Over time, programs and services will increasingly be delivered by Indigenous peoples as part of their move toward true self-government and the full implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Nous croyons que cette séparation est le meilleur moyen pour le Canada de respecter davantage ses objectifs en matière de développement durable tout en donnant suite au principe de l'autodétermination qui est au cœur de la déclaration. Nous avançons en terrain inconnu. Personne ne nous a précédés sur cette voie, mais nous ne pouvons pas nous permettre d'attendre. Le moment est venu de faire notre propre chemin ensemble. Le moment est venu de sortir des sentiers battus, de faire abstraction des limites imposées par de vieilles structures coloniales désuètes pour faire place à la nouveauté, à des structures qui respecteront les droits inhérents des Autochtones à s'autogouverner et à déterminer leur propre avenir. For the federal government, this means making changes to how we operate. The departmental change I mentioned is part of fulfilling that responsibility. For Indigenous peoples, it means taking a hard look at how they define and govern themselves as nations and governments, and how they seek to relate to other orders of government. Indigenous peoples will decide how they wish to represent and organize themselves. Some may choose to engage with our government based on historic nations and treaties. Others will use different shared experiences as the basis for coming together. The choice is theirs. That is precisely what self-determination demands. And though this path is uncharted, I am confident that we will reach a place of reconciliation. That we will reach a place as a country where nation to nation, government to government, and Inuit Crown relationships can be transformed. A place where the standards enshrined in the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples are fully realized not merely by government mandate, but in true partnership with Indigenous peoples. Part of that new partnership will involve addressing the shared challenge of climate change. Indigenous and northern communities are particularly affected by its stark reality. In communities across the north, places like Paulituk, Kugluktuk, and Tuktoyaktuk, community members are finding sea ice conditions more dangerous and unpredictable for traveling and hunting in the winter. In Canada's western Arctic, the permafrost is melting and huge pieces of tundra are eroding into the ocean. And around Baffin Island, Inuit elders are finding it difficult to forecast the weather like they used to, so difficult that many are now reluctant even to try. At home, we're working to help these communities adapt and prepare for the future. At the international level, our commitment is unwavering. There is no country on the planet that can walk away from the challenge and reality of climate change. And for our part, Canada will continue to fight for the global plan that has a realistic chance of countering it. We have a responsibility to future generations, and we will uphold it. We have a chance to build in Canada and around the world economies that are clean, that are growing, that are forward-looking. We will not let that opportunity pass us by. Au Canada, cela veut dire imposer un tarif sur la pollution causée par le carbone. Lorsque c'est bien fait, c'est le moyen le plus efficace de réduire les émissions tout en continuant à faire croître l'économie. Cela veut aussi dire continuer à travailler avec d'autres pays pour nous rapprocher des objectifs que nous nous sommes fixés. La semaine dernière, à Montréal, nous avons accueilli des leaders en matière d'environnement venant de plus de 30 pays pour participer à une séance de travail. C'était l'occasion pour nous de discuter des différents moyens de donner suite à l'accord de Paris et de maintenir l'élan international vers un avenir plus durable pour tous. Likewise, the global community has a responsibility to do all that it can to reduce inequality within and among countries. In Canada, we're working hard to achieve this goal. We improved child benefit payments. Our new program gives 9 out of 10 families more money to help with the high cost of raising their kids, and because of that, we expect to reduce child poverty in Canada by 40%. We raised taxes on the wealthiest 1%, so that we could lower them for the middle class. And we're continuing to look for ways to make our tax system more fair. Right now, we have a system that encourages wealthy Canadians to use private corporations to pay a lower tax rate than middle-class Canadians. That's not fair, and we're going to fix it. Nous faisons des investissements pour rendre l'éducation plus abordable et plus accessible, afin que chaque Canadien puisse obtenir la formation nécessaire pour trouver et pour garder un bon emploi bien rémunéré. C'est particulièrement important à une époque où l'automatisation remet en question la définition traditionnelle du travail. À l'échelle internationale, nous avons réaffirmé l'engagement du Canada à réduire la pauvreté et l'inéquité, à mettre l'égalité des sexes et l'autonomisation des femmes et des filles au cœur de nos efforts de développement. Nous avons adopté cette approche parce que nous savons que soutenir les femmes et les filles mène à la croissance économique et que la paix et la coopération prennent ensuite racine. Les familles et les communautés peuvent alors espérer avoir une meilleure qualité de vie. We are also working hard to deliver progressive trade agreements, like the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement with the European Union, which comes into effect today. CETA will expand opportunities for businesses, create good, well-paying jobs for workers, and deliver meaningful economic growth, the kind of growth that benefits all of our citizens, not just the wealthiest. We have the opportunity, and I would argue that we have the responsibility, to ensure that trade agreements include strong provisions to safeguard workers' rights, to protect the environment, and to ensure that the benefits of trade are felt more broadly. Because when we do that, we don't just grow our economies, we live up to our values. We say to ourselves and to each other that good enough just isn't good enough, and that better is always possible. Et il est toujours possible de faire mieux quand les gens sont au cœur des décisions que nous prenons. Les gens, comme nous le rappelle le thème de ce débat général, sont la clé qui nous permet de bâtir un avenir pacifique et prospère.
All right, guys, we lost that shot kind of abruptly, but I'm just getting word that we're getting in this feed of President Trump in a bilateral meeting with Shinzo Abe of Japan. We've seen them before together. I actually didn't expect this feed to come in, so it seems like a little behind the scenes right now. As they get this shot set up, we'll get some more info on this, but that's what we are to expect next live. This is coming from our Fox source, so our national channel here, and we'll see what this brings us. Meanwhile, guys, we just do have this bump shot like we had before of the UN, where we just heard remarks from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So we're going to go back to this meeting and check in to see what happens here.
With your finger.
That's more
and then listening, it's like two.
Yeah, well, like, think of me talking in your ear right now, and then you like saying it in a different language at the same time.
Well, I can't even say it. I can't even say it in another language.
I think that's harder. I don't know.
He could repeat it in English.
Yeah. Maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, yeah, maybe it is not that hard.
Maybe it is not that hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm doing it right now.
No, you're ad-libbing now.
I wish I had a camera right now.
It's impressive, and that's final.
It is impressive, yeah.
Just give him props. Give him props.
No.
So, which one is this? Turkish?
No. Yeah, Turkish.
Oh, I thought,
Turkey.
No,
this is Turkey.
Turkey.
This is not.
Yeah.
Again.
It's Turkey.
No, you're wrong.
You're like the police of the bilaterals.
You're wrong.
No.
It's not
no,
Turkey.
It's not.
It's actually not. It's not the tribe.
The Turkey one I'm a little worried about. I'm just gonna
stand in the corner.
Stand right by an agent. Just in case. You got my back right.
I dare you to go for their gun.
Watch out.
Clear.
Guys, you're watching reporters file in, and here we go into the room, and they'll have this moment here for a little photo shoot in this bilateral meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and there's President Trump.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to have Prime Minister Shinzo Abe doing a wonderful job, doing a great job for the people of Japan. We have had numerous discussions already today, and this is a formalization of the discussions. We've made a lot of progress both on trade and obviously, very importantly, we've discussed in great detail North Korea with also South Korea, as you just saw. So we will continue the dialogue. The relationship has never been closer, I believe, with Japan and the United States, and it will continue on with that way. I look forward to discussing some things that the group is here specifically to discuss, and we'll be reporting back to you later. So thank you all very much. You heard about China. You heard what China was doing today in terms of the banking system. That was a tremendous move, and we have great respect, and we also would like to thank President Xi of China. So that was a great thing he did today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here.
ここにいらっしゃることは大変光栄に思います。日本国民のために尽くしていらっしゃる、総理大臣はこういうふうに対話することができるというのは素晴らしいと思います。通商または北朝鮮についての問題も徹底的に話すこともありました。今アメリカと日本との同盟関係は非常に盤石なものであります。 これからこの素晴らしい方々と、後にまた話すことが多いと思いますが、そして先ほど中国からの発表もありましたと思いますが、銀行でのアクションということもありまして、非常に中国に対して尊敬を払いたいと思います。習主席は素晴らしいアクションを取りました。ありがとうございます。
まず、はじめに、ドラマに御礼を申し上げたいと思います。国連の一般討論演説において、横田めぐみさんについて触れていただきました。横田さんのご両親をはじめ、拉致被害者のご家族にとって大変勇気づけられる演説となりました。
At the outset of today's summit meeting, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to Donald. First of all, in your remarks to the UN General Assembly, you touched on Ms. Megumi Yokota, one of the Japanese abductees. And for the parents of her, as well as for the family members of those who had been abducted by North Korea, your message was very, very encouraging, and I do appreciate your message.
北朝鮮に対してその政策を変えさせるために今は話し合いのための話し合いをする時期ではなく、しっかりと圧力をかけていく、私とトランプ大統領のこの強い意志で国際社会を連携し、北朝鮮の非核化に向けて国際社会と共に努力を重ねていきたいと思います。
So for us, the key is to change the course of action as well as policy of North Korea. And in that context, dialogue for the sake of dialogue would not produce anything. The key at this moment is to exercise and apply pressure against North Korea in a robust manner. And together with Donald, we've been successfully demonstrating our strong will to exercise pressure against North Korea, and that actually led to the unification of the international community to address this challenge. So I certainly look forward to making every effort with you and also with other members of the international community to achieve the denuclearization of North Korea.
今日はこの北朝鮮の問題を含めさまざまな課題について議論をし、日米同盟のさらに強固なものにしていきたいと思います。
So today, I very much look forward to deepening our discussion with a focus on the issue of North Korea and also other issues. And by doing that, I certainly hope to further solidify our alliance and partnership.
Thank you, everyone.
So they can get out.
Protections for people with pre-existing conditions.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as normal, guys, the reporters take the time to shout out some questions in that moment after everything sort of concludes. You're looking at a live shot of the reporters kind of walking out there, and then upper right-hand corner is a live look at the UN, outside of the UN, as the General Assembly is going on all week. I don't believe we'll get much more from this feed here, so we're going to switch it up and go back to the Attorney General, whom, by the way, is slated to speak later this afternoon on another topic. He's talking about the federal law enforcement, about transnational criminal organizations. But earlier this morning, he spoke on the opioid epidemic, which was interesting. So we're going to bring you that video here, assuming nothing else happens live on our source. So we're going to go back to that video that we had started out to play earlier today, and just we'll keep an eye on these Fox sources to see what else is coming in today. Not too much really jumping around at us in the newsroom right now, or other national sort of stories. We were watching as the recovery efforts continue in Mexico City from the horrible earthquake that happened, that have left more than 200 people dead, and there were some happy stories and some really sad stories that came out of it. Some children rescued, others found dead in the rubble. Looks like we're getting one more source in from Puerto Rico after the hurricane has passed over there. We heard an update from Mike Thomas this morning about the weather stuff down there. So if you are interested and you haven't, you're just joining us now, you can, when this stream stops, you can go back earlier and get the whole recap, sort of the coverage on the breakdown of what's going on down there. But we often have some video coming in from Puerto Rico on what it looks like there with some of the flooding and the waters from Maria.
As a result of the earthquake earlier this week, sources APTN, and you cannot stream this.
All right, this is a live look at the search and rescue in Mexico, but this shot sort of stays up throughout the day, so we're going to go back to the video from the Attorney General. So I'll keep an eye on this. If anything does come out of it or break, we'll bring you the breaking news, of course, first.
I'll be talking about today, and it was a good meeting then, and I look forward to a good meeting with you today. Shelley Moore Capito was there, and I appreciate her, and my friend Joe Manchin, I appreciate him and his support. And Congressman Mooney is here. There he is, Alec. Great to see you. It's good to visit with you a little this morning, and thank you for your leadership on this subject and so many other conservative values that this nation has to confront. You know, Bob Terrell, the editor of the American Spectator, says conservatism is not an ideology, it's a cast of mind. It's how you approach things. And most of us, I think, that are conservative or cautious, or what shall I say, we just are not too enamored with the latest new idea. We want to think it through, like, why hadn't it been done before? A lot of these new ideas turn out to be worse. Matt, thank you for your leadership. I appreciate that very much. The ACU is one of the oldest and largest grassroots conservative organizations in this country. Its value is just tremendous, and I appreciate that. And I want to congratulate you on Mercedes' return to the White House and her leadership there, and be a big assist to President Bush. President Trump. So I would also like to thank you for your leadership in hosting this discussion. I know today you'll talk about a lot of these issues in detail. It may be that you would say that I'm hitting the high points, but I think that's important too, to make sure we get a good perspective as you go forward throughout your day. And I'm glad to be able to participate. We are indeed. Before I get started, I see Wayne Rich down here, great patriot. How many years in the Department of Justice, Wayne? 33? And then he's been off to Iraq and Afghanistan or somewhere, I don't know, helping rebuild those countries after he retired from the Department of Justice. It's good to see you again. Appreciate that. So we're in the midst of a daily opioid crisis, and now a months-long, really years-long epidemic. It is that, in fact. Make no mistake, however, that combating this poison is a priority of President Trump. I've been in a number of meetings with him, which he's been personally engaged in this. He's asked Governor Christie to lead in talking about many of the disastrous results that are occurring, the addiction that is occurring as a result of the opioid epidemic. He's had other ideas and programs that are going forward. You can be sure that we in the Department of Justice are focused on doing something about it. In fact, President Trump recently declared that this week to be Prescription Opioid and Heroin Epidemic Awareness Week in order to bring greater attention to the devastation caused by highly addictive drugs. In making this declaration, the President has stated unequivocally to all those who are suffering from addiction and seeking treatment or who are in recovery that we stand with you. We want you to succeed. We're praying for you, and we are working every day to see what we can do to help make things better. But let's be clear about what we're up against. Today, we're facing the deadliest drug crisis in American history. In 2015, a record 52,000 Americans lost their lives from drug overdoses. 52,000, 1,000 a week. That's more than the population of Charleston. More Americans died of drug overdoses than died from car crashes or died at the height of the AIDS epidemic. And amazingly, for Americans under the age of 50, drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death. That is an amazing statistic to me. And as I have expected and divined, this problem is not a blip on the horizon. The numbers for 2016 are preliminary numbers are now in. They're even worse than last year. 64,000 Americans lost their lives to drug overdoses last year, 2016. 64,000. That would be the highest drug death toll and the fastest increase in the death toll in American history. And every day the crisis continues to grow as more than 5,000 Americans abuse painkillers for the first time. Talk to the police, ask them about it. They'll tell you many people became addicted almost their first time they've tried some of these powerful and addictive drugs. We've never seen deaths like this before. Even in the 70s and 80s, the drug crisis was so real at that time. And when I was involved in, as a United States Attorney and dealing with it, we never saw anything like these deaths. It's caused from a number of different reasons. So this crisis is driven primarily by the opioid crisis, prescription painkillers, heroin, and synthetic drugs like fentanyl. In 2015, opioids were responsible for most of the fatal drug overdoses in the country, killing more than 33,000, 4 times the number of 20 years ago. Last year, there were 1.3 million hospital visits in the United States related to drugs. And as you know, West Virginia has been hit especially hard. According to the Centers for Drug Control and Prevention, West Virginia had the highest rate of overdose deaths in 2015 at nearly 3 times the national average. In West Virginia, more than 4 out of 5 overdose deaths were related to opioids. The top 4 counties in America for opioid overdose deaths, Wyoming, McDowell, Boone, and Mingo, are all in West Virginia, and 6 other counties in the state fall in the top 20. I can't say that Alabama is much better. We are #1 in the nation and have been for 5 consecutive years in prescriptions per citizen. The deaths aren't quite as high, but they're increasing rapidly in Alabama. So you're not the only place, but it is a challenge to West Virginia in particular to meet this threat. These trends are shocking. The numbers tell us a lot, but they aren't just numbers, of course. They represent moms and dads and brothers and sisters, neighbors and friends and co-workers. They represent unique, irreplaceable people, our fellow Americans. Few of us, if any, are untouched by family or friends who've succumbed to this problem. These numbers represent the 26-year-old pregnant mother who overdosed here in Charleston, accidentally killing both herself and her unborn child. They represent the couple who were found dead in the Kernville home a week after they had overdosed on heroin. Tragically, their 5-month-old daughter was found with them, dead from starvation and dehydration. So I recently had the opportunity to address the National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. It was during this event I was able to view this crisis through the eyes of a child. And think about that. Just imagine for a moment you're a helpless toddler who cries for her mother to wake up and the mother never does. Or the poor infant that is wailing in the NICU unit due to opioid withdrawal. You just entered this world and are already suffering from sins you did not commit. We must make progress for those currently afflicted and for those who have yet to be caught in this addictive trap. Drug dealers across America are profiting from the crisis. They are making the drugs stronger and more deadly by lacing heroin with fentanyl, and a drug 30 to 50 times more powerful than heroin, and carfentanil, a synthetic opioid, 100 times more potent than that. Carfentanil is, as you know, is so powerful that its main use is as an elephant tranquilizer. These drugs put bystanders and first responders at risk too. Exposure to even a few grams of fentanyl can be fatal. A police officer in Ohio suffered an overdose after brushing powder off his uniform after what was a routine traffic stop. Another officer in New Jersey was rushed to the emergency room after a puff of fentanyl came out while he was opening a bag. I know that the ACU is committed to growing our economy and shrinking our government budgets and our deficits, both of which need to be shrunk. But drug abuse does exactly the opposite. It shrinks our economy and it grows budgets of the United States government and state governments. It is estimated that prescription opioid addiction costs our economy some $78 billion a year, and that illicit drugs cost us a total of $193 billion a year. Drug abuse reduces the productivity of our workers. It eliminates many otherwise qualified individuals from our workforce due to addiction and criminal records and drug use. It puts a strain on healthcare programs like Medicaid. It's filling our emergency rooms, our foster homes, our cemeteries. Every limited government pro-growth conservative needs to think about these things as we work to establish good policy. The point is that our country is advanced by having more Americans healthy, drug-free, and ready to go to work. Every addicted American reduces the productivity of America. We need to get our people working. We need to get our people working before we bring in workers from abroad, especially people who come unlawfully. This is a challenge for this country. We have one of the lowest workforce participation rates in history. In the working ages, we have an extraordinarily low number of Americans actually with a job. It's gotten better under President Trump and last year or so, but we've got a long way to go to reverse that trend, and a lot of people are not working because of drug abuse and addiction. But sadly, even with this record death toll, exorbitant costs, new tragedies are taking place every day. Some people in our culture and in government continue to say that drug abuse is just no big deal, or that it's merely a private choice, a private matter. That is wrong. We have a culture to defend, an economy to defend, a nation to defend. To confront a crisis of this scale, we must have a comprehensive antidote to the problem, and I believe, and those of us who've been there a while, like Wayne, I think would agree with this: prevention, enforcement, and treatment. And enforcement in some ways is a part of prevention. Treatment is important. In some cases, treatment really helps break the cycle of addiction and crime, get people back on their feet and out of the clutches of drugs. But treatment can't be our only policy. Treatment often comes too late. It came too late for 62,000 people last year. By the time many people receive treatment, they, their families, and communities have already suffered terribly. The struggle to overcome addiction is a long process. It often fails. Sadly, it does fail too often. The best long-term solution is prevention. The best action is not to start. Nancy Reagan said, just say no. Don't start. And prevention is what we at the department do every day, because law enforcement is prevention. Enforcing our laws helps keep drugs out of our country, drives up their price, reduces their purity, their availability, and their addictiveness. So I want to give special credit to your Attorney General, Patrick Morrissey, who I think you'll hear from later. He's been tireless in his efforts to combat this crisis from all fronts. We have a unique partnership between his office and our U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of West Virginia to combat drug trafficking, and it has netted a total of 8 convictions since its implementation in 2015. His office has also filed lawsuits against all culpable parts of the pharmaceutical supply chain. They're enforcing the law against physicians and pharmacies and wholesalers and manufacturing, and we have to have that kind of approach. We've had success at the Department of Justice as well. 2 months ago, the department announced the largest healthcare fraud takedown in history. DOJ coordinated the efforts, but it included more than 1,000 state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies who arrested 400 defendants. More than 50 of these defendants involved cases of opioid-related crimes, which means we were also the largest opioid-related fraud takedown in American history. Some 50 doctors were involved in those charges. And just a week later, the Department of Justice announced the seizure and takedown of Alpha Bay.
All right, guys, from there, we're going to take it back into the newsroom. That was Attorney General Jeff Sessions this morning talking about the opioid epidemic from West Virginia. So just trying to sort of do a cursory overview of some of the stuff that happened this morning. Meanwhile, we still have this live look at the search and rescue efforts that continue in Mexico City. Not a whole lot of new information there, but I'm sure the numbers will compile. We'll hear some more facts about what's going on down there. The latest from the live shot that we kind of listened into earlier was that the Israeli search and rescue team has come over and immediately just dropped everything to help the Mexican group also working in their efforts to recover people really out of this rubble of schools and offices and everything in this area. And I believe the shot was sort of on this office building that had collapsed. So I believe this is still what that is, but we're getting sort of this steady stream of video from that site today as this all continues. So we're going to continue to follow that story, of course, tomorrow. We'll also have more updates on the hurricane status as it sort of rolls through and hopefully gets out of our sight for a little bit. I know Mike Thomas was like, if there's no hurricanes, there's not going to be a ton of weather news, but that's obviously a better thing. So there's less damage, and we'll be watching to see if Hurricane Maria downgrades any bit tomorrow. So we'll have more on that for you, and also anything else political and anything else breaking. As always, we continue our coverage on our digital and on-air platforms. And so with that, we're going to close down the digital show for today in the newsroom here. I'm Molly Nevola. Really great to hang out with you guys, and thanks for joining us on the stream. We're here on YouTube, so if you are part of our channel, great. If not, you can subscribe using that red button and be part of our YouTube channel here. We go up every day from 11:30 through the afternoon and bring you all the live stuff that we got, including reporter cameras from our reporters who are out in the field and anything breaking that they might have, and anything really digital, kind of involving Twitter, video, anything that we can get on our screens here to show you. So we're really happy to be able to do this. So thanks again for joining us today, guys. More online on our website and on our Facebook page, Fox 5 DC, and we'll see you tomorrow at 11:30 as always. All right, guys, we'll leave you with a shot of the Capitol on this last day of summer, going into the fall tomorrow, guys. See you then.